Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
What's going on, guys? It is TNT Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NFL Edition, NFC East preview. Rolling right along here, just a couple more weeks until the NFL season starts. With me, as always, is the fine citizen, Mr. Jacob Workman. Jake, what's going on, man?
Not a lot. Just closer and closer to football, which is what we want. Less than a week away from the Hall of Fame game now.
Yeah. Things are going to be kicking off here this week, so I love it. We're not going to, I think you said this in the other show, last Thursday was the last Thursday without football for the next, I don't even know.
Long time. I think it was like January or February.
Yeah. So it's awesome. All right, guys. Well, let's jump right in here. Like I said, today we're going to be covering the NFC East, starting with the Washington Commanders. It was a tough year for the 23 Washington Commanders as they entered their first season under new owner Josh Harris after buying the franchise from Daniel Snyder for $6 billion. The team looked to improve their offensive woes with a change at the offensive coordinator position, replacing Scott Turner with former Chiefs OC Eric Bieniemy, who came in as both offensive coordinator and assistant head coach and was tasked with turning around an offense with new starter Sam Howell under center after the team had released Carson Wentz. The team started off in the right direction as the Commanders kicked their year off at 2-0 with wins over Arizona and Denver. Unfortunately for Washington, that was the bright spot for the team for this year. The team was sitting at 3-5 and seemingly not completely out of playoff picture when they decided it was time to make major changes, particularly on the defensive front. Starting on Halloween, the Commanders traded former first-round defensive end pick Montez Sweat to the Chicago Bears for a 2024 second-round pick. Soon after, and just before the trade deadline, Washington then shipped former number 2 overall pick and defensive end Chase Young to the San Francisco 49ers in exchange for the Niners' 24 compensatory third-round pick. It would take another month before the team fired defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio and DB's coach Brent Weisselmeyer following a 45-10 loss to the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. All in all, it was a short-lived hot start for the Commanders, quickly turning into something ugly as they went on to finish 2-13 for the remainder of the year after a 2-0 start, including going 0-8 in their final 8 games and not finding a home win beyond week 1. Overall, it was their worst season since 2019, their last year as the Redskins. The Commanders finished the season giving up the most points by any team in the league at 518 and had the worst point differential in the league as well at -189. Coupled with a bottom 10 offense, the Commanders just could never get things going. All of this concluded with a change of guard as following their last loss of the year, Josh Harris announced that Riverboat Ron Rivera had been dismissed. Jake, what were your thoughts on the performance of the 23 Washington Commanders?
A lot of what you just mentioned. So that when you trade Montez Sweat and Chase Young, it kind of shows what you're giving up. You really don't have much faith in the team at that point. I do think there were some good... Rivera being gone, I think, is good. Some new ownership clearly was needed. Dan Snyder being gone, I think, is huge. So to see if it writes the passage of them. The team just wasn't good. Terry McLaurin is probably the bright spot. That was about it. I mean, they don't have a lot. I'm not a big fan of this team and what they do. Interesting. Some changes, bringing in Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, which I know we're going to get into here in a second. But yeah, based off last year, they were awful. And to Sam Howell, I was not ever really too big on Sam Howell at North Carolina either. So he was an interesting choice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about some of those offseason stories. So we saw a lot of changes in the offseason for the Washington Commanders, starting with the front office. Washington brought in Adam Peters, former assistant general manager of the 49ers for the last 3 years. The coaching staff got a complete reset. Starting at the top, as you just mentioned, Washington hired former Atlanta Falcons head coach and more recently former defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, Dan Quinn, as their next head coach. Quinn brought with him another Cowboys coach in the former Joe Witt Jr., who is moving from his former position as the Cowboys secondary coach into the DC role. The Commanders also made a change on offense, despite only getting 1 year out of Eric Bieniemy, hiring former Texas Tech and Arizona Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury as the team's offensive play caller. The player personnel side of the equation got its own refresh. So the team traded quarterback Sam Howell to the Seattle Seahawks, along with a 4th and 6th round pick in exchange for Seattle's 3rd and 5th round selections. The move would make way for the Commanders to select a quarterback with their round 1 pick 2 selection. In addition to Sam Howell, the franchise also said goodbye to multiple familiar faces as players like safety Cam Curl, cornerback Kendall Fuller, wide receivers Byron Pringle and Curtis Samuel, running back Antonio Gibson, and tight end Logan Thomas have all moved on. Incoming players to fill the holes left in the roster include the likes of Marcus Mariota, Dante Fowler Jr., Tyler Biotish, Bobby Wagner, tight end Zach Ertz, and running back Austin Eckler, who's coming over from the LA Chargers. As we touched on a minute ago, the biggest hole to fill was the one left behind from Sam Howell trade, and the team found their franchise quarterback in the draft. With the second overall pick, the Commanders selected LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels, who looks to step in and start immediately for the franchise. Other notable draft picks include names like Jerzon Newton, defensive tackle out of Illinois, and Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver out of Rice, and Christian McCaffrey's brother. What's the biggest impact move here when looking at all the Commanders' action this offseason beyond Jaden Daniels? And how do you think Dan Quinn's going to do in his first year at head coach?
So I think probably the best thing they did was the Eckler signing to pair him with Brian Robinson. I mean, obviously a brand new rookie quarterback, you're going to want to have a little bit of a run game. Eckler has been shown. I mean, he's had great years for the Chargers. I think Brian Robinson will still be good. All the help that they can give Daniels is, I think, what they need. I think Dotson's going to have to step up a little bit, and he's going to have to be big. McLaurin obviously is huge, and if McCaffrey can come in and fill the slot role, I mean, the offense isn't awful. Zach Ertz at tight end, and the offensive line isn't too horrendous. Thankfully, Daniels can move, so that'll be one benefit. The defense is where I really struggle with this team. I don't think this defense is good at all.
Yeah, so taking a look at the depth chart here, obviously we've got Jaden Daniels starting at quarterback. Austin Eckler is slotted as RB1. He'll be complementing Brian Robinson, who's probably going to fill more of that power back role. Their wide receiver core is Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Luke McCaffrey. As you just mentioned, Zach Ertz is coming in at tight end. They've got a couple new faces on the offensive line. Like we already talked about, Tyler Biotish, Sam Cosmi is one of the guys to look out for there. And then on the defensive front, we talked about how they really hit the reset button in a lot of ways midway through the season. Looking at this roster, Dante Fowler, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Dorrance Armstrong as their front unit. Not a bad unit for four guys with their hands in the dirt. But then there's some questions here, definitely at linebacker. Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, who's getting up there in age, and Jamin Davis are their three linebackers. In the secondary, they've got Emmanuel Forbes Jr., Jeremy Chin, Derek Forrest, and Benjamin St. Just. So looking at the offense and defensive side of the equation here, anything stand out to you as potential concerns? I know you just talked about the defense being a question mark.
These guys don't look too fucking
I mean, I think the whole defense is a concern. Bobby Wagner is. I'm honestly surprised he's even still playing. Like I don't know. I don't see much faith in this defense at all. And obviously, I mean, the running game needs to keep the ball for a long time. They're going to have to be a very ball control offense if they're going to try to win anything with this defense. I think this team is destined for quite a terrible season, to be honest. Jaden Daniels will be fun to watch. I'll give him that. He can move. He's fun. I mean, if you even watched LSU last year and saw what he did, he's definitely fun to watch. I mean, this whole rookie quarterback class is going to be a lot of fun to watch. But this team is I'm not honestly any game. Like I will never turn on a Commanders game and be excited this year.
Yeah, so let's talk about those games that are coming up here. So taking a look at their schedule, they start the season off on the road at Tampa Bay, then come back home to play the Giants at home. They have a Monday night matchup against Cincinnati in Cincinnati. Then they hit the road again the following week to travel to Arizona to play the Cardinals. Sunday, October 6th, they are at home against the Cleveland Browns. Then they hit the road again to play at Baltimore, return home for a 2-game stretch against both the Panthers and the Bears. Then they are on the road again playing the Giants Sunday, November 3rd. Next game up, they're playing home against Pittsburgh. They've got at Philly, and that is going to be a Thursday night game. Sunday, November 24th, they're playing Dallas in Washington. Next game, Sunday, December 1st, is home against Tennessee. Their bye week does not come until week 14, so pretty late in the season there for them. And then their last 4 games are at New Orleans, home against Philadelphia, home against the Falcons, and then on the road in Dallas. Taking a look at their division odds here, they're at plus 1,100. Vegas has got the over-under sitting at 6.5. What are you looking at here as far as what their 24 season is going to look like?
So I have them at 5-12, which will be under the 6.5 at minus 105.
Okay. Yep. I've got them in the under as well. I have them sitting at 3-14. So I just could not find a whole lot of wins for this team. First year rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to come in and definitely be able to, improve the offense a little bit over what was with Sam Howell. I'm hoping that they don't have to throw the ball as much. I think one of the biggest problems with Howell is that he wasn't able to stay upright. I'm pretty sure he got hit more than any quarterback in the league last year. So hopefully the Commanders can right the ship there a little bit. But I do have them sitting in the under as well. All right, let's move on to the next team here. We've got the New York Giants. 2023 Giants entered the season looking to grow after the previous year where they finished above 500 for the first time since 2016. They won a road playoff game against the Vikings, and their head coach, Brian Dable, won NFL Coach of the Year in 2022. Unfortunately for Giant fans, growth is not what happened. The season started off ugly as the Cowboys traveled to MetLife for Sunday Night Football and demolished the Giants 40-0. A close win against Kyler Murray-less Arizona Cardinals brought the team to 1-1, and then things really started to fall apart from there. The team went on to lose their next 4 straight, including a Week 5 loss in Miami, where Daniel Jones would suffer a neck injury that would sideline him for 3 straight weeks. At 2-7 in Week 9, Daniel Jones would return, but only managed roughly 21 snaps before he unfortunately tore his ACL, which knocked him out for the rest of the year. The Giants went on to test out undrafted rookie QB Tommy Cutlets, a.k.a. Tommy DeVito, who after the Week 10 loss to the Cowboys appeared to give the team a little bit of a spark as they went on a 3-game winning streak. Wasn't long-lived, however, as Tyrod Taylor was handed the job for the remainder of the season after the Giants lost their Christmas Day game against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just heard that audio play, Workman, so I have no idea when you actually played that.
It was a long time ago.
The Giants went on to finish their season at 6-11, good for third in the NFC East in their 9th sub-500 season in the past 11 years. While injuries and roster moves certainly impacted the team throughout the season, one of the most glaring issues that the Giants had throughout the year was their offensive line play. The team finished with 85 sacks allowed, second most in NFL history, and 20 more than any other team in the league. They also finished with the second lowest third down conversion in the league, converting just 29.5% of their attempts. On the defensive side of the ball, the Giants finished 27th in total defense, 29th against the run, and 26th in scoring defense, leaving a lot to be desired despite tying for the league lead in takeaways. What are your thoughts on the 2023 season for the New York Football Giants?
So as you mentioned, obviously the injury to Daniel Jones was huge. 6-11 after starting 2-8 isn't terrible. I mean, a little bit of a run to close the season. I think that there is something to build on when they did have late season wins over the Packers and the Eagles, which were playoff teams at least. I mean, it's something when your team's pretty bad. I do like what they've done a little bit in the offseason. I like that they went and got Brian Burns, Devin Singletary, John Runyon Jr. Like they've done things to improve. The Malik Neighbors draft pick is my big question. I'm not sure that's where I would have went. He's pretty small for a wide receiver 1. And when Daniel Jones has been injured last year, but has always kind of underperformed, I think the move there probably should have been quarterback.
Yeah, so let's talk about that offseason a little bit more detail. Let's start with coaches, though. Defensive coordinator Wink Martindale and the Giants agreed to part ways after a really tense season in a rumored fallout with the head coach, Brian Daboll. Fox Sports insider Jay Glazer had reported high tension between the two coaches as early as November, and when Daboll fired 2 of Martindale's assistants on the defensive side of the ball, apparently it led to a private meeting where Martindale cursed Daboll out for the move, stormed out of the room, slammed the door, left the facility, and the following day he was spotted at an airport waiting for a flight as the Giants announced that they had agreed to part ways. It took a couple of weeks before the Giants found their replacement in former Titans DC Shane Bowen, who took the same position after being with Tennessee for the past 3 years. Player movement was abundant for the Giants this offseason as they saw multiple franchise players leave for greener pastures. Saquon Barkley, Cam Brown, Paris Campbell, Xavier McKinney, and Tyrod Taylor are all just some of the names that managed to find a new home. They also saw their starting tight end Darren Waller hang it up, retiring from the NFL in a June 10th announcement. The Giants were able to bring in some new faces that were sure to make an immediate impact, though, starting with their biggest pickup. You mentioned this a little bit ago. The Giants traded their 2nd and 5th round picks in 2024, along with a conditional 25 pick to the Carolina Panthers in exchange for Spider-Man Brian Burns and a 24 5th round pick. In addition to Burns, the Giants were also to bring in Devin Motor Singletary, who you talked about, John Runyon, who you talked about, Jermaine Eluamore, to try to solidify that offensive line. Drew Lock is coming in to back up Daniel Jones, safety Jalen Mills, wide receiver Allen Robinson, in center Austin Schlottman, among others. And then finally, as far as the draft is concerned, we've got 2 names of note here. First, their round 1 pick 6, Malik Neighbors. if any of you guys are watching Hard Knocks and how all of that stuff shaked out, it looked like they were really high on Neighbors pretty early into the whole process. And before they even had a full understanding of whether or not they were going to be able to trade up to the 3 spot with New England, which they were having some conversations about, and seeing where some other players were going to fall. Early on, Schoen was saying that he was really hoping that Malik Neighbors was going to be there at 6. So Brian Dibble and that team really are seeing something in him. And then Tyler Newman, safety from Minnesota, was their second round pick, and he looks to come in as the starting strong safety. So looking at all these impact moves here, what are you thinking, and how do you think the Giants offense is going to look in their first year without Saquon in quite a while?
So, like I said, I once was a believer in Daniel Jones. I'm really not anymore. The Neighbors pick, I don't like the Neighbors pick. I think he's too small to be a wide receiver 1 and they don't really have another great receiver to go with him. So I just think that was not a good pick. Like he's too small to be a wide receiver 1, and with a struggling running back or a struggling quarterback, already, it wouldn't surprise me if Drew Lock doesn't play half this season, to be honest. I'm just not. This is kind of another one of those teams I'm not that big on. I like Burns to go with Thibodeau on the defense with Dexter Lawrence. Like, I think there's pieces there. But again, you look at the secondary, and that secondary's ass. Like, I don't know. This is 2 teams in a row where I feel like I could go out there with 5 friends and throw for 300 yards. Like, this is, I just don't feel like this defense or the secondary is good.
Yeah, they definitely have some holes here looking at the depth chart here. Obviously, Daniel Jones is returning. We'll see how long he lasts. Hopefully, he can stay healthy for the entire year. Devin Singletary is a different running back than what Saquon Barkley is, so it's going to be interesting to see how he plays out. I do think he's a little shiftier of a back. They do have an improved offensive line, so we'll see if Singletary is able to take some pressure off of Jones. This wide receiver core with Malik Neighbors stepping in as the wide receiver 1, Darius Slayton at the 2, and Wan'Dale Robinson as the 3. Definitely a lot to be desired there as far as their receiving core goes. And then looking at defense, we talked about Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. They've got some names there in that front 7, but beyond that, there's just not a lot. Tyler Newman being your starting strong safety. He played pretty serviceably for the Gophers. But I don't know that I would have labeled him as a starting strong safety coming into the NFL draft. So definitely some question marks here on the Giants as terms of the depth chart. Taking a look at the schedule, I don't have to run through the entire schedule here. They've got a lot of pretty difficult games throughout the season here. They're going to be at Washington and at Cleveland in the first 2 of the first 3 weeks. They're playing Dallas on Thursday, September 26th. They've got road games against Seattle. They've got a road game against the Steelers. Again, road game in Dallas, and that's going to be the Thanksgiving Day game. And then they're going to be traveling to Atlanta on the 22nd to play the Falcons, and then they finish their season on the road against the Eagles. And they've obviously got some other key home games here spread throughout that are not going to be easy wins. Philadelphia, again, obviously they're playing them twice. Cincinnati, they're going to play in New York. But taking a look at the schedule here, plus 1,400 on the division odds, and their over-under is 6.5. Where do you have these guys sitting at the end of the year?
I've got them pretty safe on the under. I've got them at 4-13, which is under the 6.5 at -150.
Yep, I am at the exact same spot. I've got them at 4-13. So we'll see what happens here. They do have an international game there, November 10th. One thing to note: they're playing the Carolina Panthers, and that is in London, correct?
Believe so.
Yeah. So got one of those games that's a road game is going to be a little bit of a trip, but we'll see what happens with the Giants this year. If you guys have not watched the Hard Knocks show, it's pretty good considering all things, seeing some of the movement that happened during the offseason. All right. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. 2023 season was a tale of 2 teams. A strong draft, riding the momentum of making it to the Super Bowl and coming within 4 points of hoisting the Lombardi. Eagles came out on fire and looked like one of, if not the best team in the NFC, starting the season on a 5-game winning streak and winning 10 of their first 11 games. But the rest of the season turned sour. After a Week 12 overtime win against the Bills, the Eagles went on to lose 5 of their last 6 games, sliding out of the number 1 seed in the NFC and handing the Dallas Cowboys the NFC East title. The team still managed to make the playoffs, but it was short-lived as the wildcard road matchup against the Bucs in Tampa was never really a game. Tampa went on to beat Philly 32-9, eliminating the Eagles from the playoffs in what was one of the more memorable late-season collapses in recent NFL history. And the blows didn't stop there, because shortly after their loss to the Bucks, Philadelphia fired both offensive coordinator Brian Johnson and defensive coordinator Sean Desai. Not long after, veteran center and face of the franchise Jason Kelsey announced his retirement after finishing all 13 seasons in his career in Philadelphia. 6 days later, 12-year veteran and defensive line anchor Fletcher Cox also announced his retirement. Bad defense was definitely an ongoing problem for Philly, despite some big names on the rosters. They finished with a 26th ranked defense. 8 of their 11 wins were a one-score game. And while they performed respectably against mediocre teams, they really struggled late in the season against stronger teams like San Francisco and Dallas. What were your thoughts on the late 23 season collapse for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah, to be 10-1 and finish 11-6, obviously something's going wrong there. It was just a crazy season. Like, you had Big Dom, the security guy, getting kicked off the field for this whole season once there was an issue there. And Matt Patricia was on their coaching staff, which is a disaster. Everything I think that they went wrong started because they had Matt Patricia on their coaching staff, regardless if he had anything to do with it or not. That's who's getting the blame. That team it just seemed like that team was too good for that to happen. And then even like a playoff game facing Tampa, like, you're like, okay, maybe they should be able to bring it back around and handle this game. No, they got smoked. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of things going wrong there. I don't know. Like, it was a very shocking twist to the season there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the offseason here. Team obviously retained Nick Sirianni, so he's going to return in his 4th year as head coach. What seems like every other coaching position went through changes, though. Former Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator Vic Fangio was named the team's new DC on January 27th. We talked a good bit about that during the AFC East conversation with the Dolphins. 9 days later, the team announced that they would be bringing in former Cowboys and Chargers offensive coordinator Kellen Moore to be the new offensive coordinator. This will be the 2nd year in a row where the team is starting a season with new offensive and defensive coordinators. It's hard to create stability when you've got that much turnover. The changes didn't stop there either. The Eagles made 14 different changes to their coaching tree, hitting reset on almost every staff position. From a player personnel perspective, the team said goodbye to a few key players. We already talked about Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox both retiring. Kevin Byard, Jack Driscoll, DeAndre Swift, Quez Watkins, Boston Scott, Rashad Penny, Marcus Marietta. Those are just some of the names that we saw find a new home. Hassan Riddick is also gone after a trade with the Jets in exchange for a 26 conditional 3rd-round pick. The Eagles did make some solid impact signings, though they look to bolster their line on both sides of the ball. Saquon Barkley is now a Philadelphia Eagle. He signed a 3-year deal after the Giants let him walk in free agency. The team also brought in quarterback Kenny Pickett in a trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers, along with a 24 4th-rounder in exchange for a 24 3rd and 225 picks. Additional signings include CJ GJ, Paris Campbell, John Ross, CJ Uzuma, Mekhi Becton, Devin White, Bryce Huff, and Zach Bond, among others. As far as the draft goes, the draft was an important one as the Eagles look to fill some remaining gaps with their rookie selections. Starting with the secondary, they used their first 2 selections to take cornerbacks Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo and then Cooper DeJean from Iowa. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., linebacker out of Clemson, was another defensive player the team brought in. And then on the offensive side of the ball, 2 guys of note are running back Will Shipley out of Clemson and then your boy Johnny Wilson, wide receiver out of Florida State. What do you think would be the biggest impact here when looking at the totality of the Eagles offseason moves?
So I really liked bringing in Saquon for running back because, as you know, I've never been too big on DeAndre Swift. So I like Saquon a lot. And then you just mentioned, I do like Shipley, them drafting Shipley to pair with Barkley and Gainwell. I think Shipley will be a little sneaky play. I think Shipley's immediately an upgrade over anything DeAndre Swift would do. I've watched Shipley a lot at Clemson, and he's one of the players I'm very happy that he's gone from Clemson. He's just one of those tough ass guys that can do everything. He can catch, he can run. He's a good player. I think he fits the Nick Sirianni dog mentality in Philadelphia. I think that's a very good pickup. Quinyon Mitchell, that's where I'm a little skeptical. He's more of a zone corner, and to pair him with an aging Darius Slay, and CJ GJ wasn't even healthy most of last year. So actually he missed almost all of last year for Detroit. Mm-hmm. So again, it's another one of those teams in the conference where I'm like, I don't know what I feel about this secondary. Obviously I feel it's better than the Giants and the Commanders, but I just, a lot is still to be seen from this secondary here. I really like the offense though in Philly.
Yeah, the offense is solid. You've got Hurts, obviously, is still there at quarterback. We talked about Saquon Barkley. They've got a solid receiving core with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Paris Campbell. Dallas Goedert is still there at tight end. I do think there's some question marks here on the offensive line, losing Jason Kelsey as a starting point here. Lane Johnson's also getting up there in age, so they're going to have to look to replace him sooner than later. On the defensive front seven looks really solid. We talked a lot last year about how much of a stud Jalen Carter is and how much of a steal that was in the draft. Jordan Davis there as well to bolster that front four. Bryce Huff, Nakobe Dean, and Devin White, solid linebackers. But then again, you get to the secondary here. There's question marks. Cooper DeJean, I don't know if he's going to end up starting at some point in time. I'm assuming that he'll probably be their 3 in the cornerback room. Reed Blankenship, not totally sold on him. We talked about the health issues with CJ. So yeah, there's definitely some question marks here on the defensive front. Taking a look at their schedule here, they're kicking things off Friday, November 6th against Green Bay, and this is being played in Brazil, right? And did you say last week or the week before last that neither team can wear green?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
I'm guessing we'll see the all blacks versus the all whites. I think the Eagles have all black. So
yeah, that's a little crazy. When they come back, their first actual like in the state game is going to be a Monday night game against the Falcons. That one should be a fun one to watch because the Falcons have definitely improved a little bit from last year. Week 5 bye, pretty early for the Eagles, so we'll see how they're able to maintain that stretch when they come back from the bye, having to play every week thereafter. A couple games of note here. Sunday, October 27th, they're playing at Cincinnati. That's going to be a tough one. Sunday, November 10th, they're playing at Dallas. Sunday, November 24th, they're playing at the Rams. Really, really solid football team. The following week, they're traveling to Baltimore to play the Ravens in Baltimore. They also play Pittsburgh Sunday, December 15th. That is at home in Philly. Their last 2 games are at home against Dallas and then at home against the Giants. Taking a look at the schedule, they're minus 120 for division odds. So with all things considered, Vegas thinks that these guys are going to come out with the NFC East crown. Over under is 10.5. Where do you guys have these? Where do you have these guys sitting at the end of the year?
So I did have them getting just over. I had them finish 11-6 over the 10.5 at the minus 134. But yeah, there's some that at Cincinnati, at Baltimore, at Rams. Like there's a tough little stretch there. Like those are going to be. I don't know. And to start the season internationally, like that's a game they could even potentially lose. I think we're going to know a lot pretty quick about this team.
Yeah, that stretch, October 20th to Sunday, November 20, or excuse me, Sunday, December 1st. I mean, they have 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 5 of their next 7 games in that stretch are road games, and they're at New York to play the Giants, at Cincinnati, then they're home against Jacksonville, at Dallas, home against the Redskins, and then they're on the road again.
Commanders
travel across the country. What did I say?
Redskins.
My bad. Commanders, excuse me. Please don't write in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then next 2 games they're playing at LA and at Baltimore. So that's definitely a tough stretch. I think how they come out of that 7-game stretch is probably going to depend on whether or not they're going to win the NFC East, because if they lose 3 or 4 of those games, which is possible, they could definitely see some changes there. I have them with 1 more win than you do. I have them sitting at 12-5, going 4-2 in the division. So not too far off here. We both have them in the over though. So, all right, let's move on to the final team in the NFC East, which is the Dallas Cowboys. It was another year of solid regular season performance and lackluster postseason performance for my Dallas Cowboys. Regular season started off a little slow, going 5-3 in the first 8 games. Team found a spark after a close loss in Philadelphia to the Eagles in week 9. Went 7-2 in their last 9, including a crazy game against Seattle on Thanksgiving, a blowout win against the Eagles in Dallas December 10th, and a highly controversial win that I won't talk too much again about against the Detroit Lions because I don't want Workman to get too worked up here. End result was a final regular season record of 12-5, an undefeated home record, an NFC East title, and the 2 seed in the playoffs. Cowboys came in with 16 straight home wins and were amped up to make a playoff run until they ran into the young and red-hot Green Bay Packers and the now filthy rich Jordan Love. They got throttled. Packers went up 27-0 before the Cowboys finally found the end zone just before the end of the half. They went down 27-7 into halftime. Dallas padded the stat sheet, but it was never a game. They were eliminated from playoff competition very handedly by the Packers. For the 28th straight season, the Cowboys found mediocrity when it matters most, failed to advance beyond the wild card or division round. Is what seems like a broken record. The Cowboys showed talent and poise in the regular season. When you look at the stats, they had the number 5 offense and number 5 defense in the league looking at total yardage. And that was despite having some key injuries throughout the year with guys like Trevon Diggs, Tony Pollard, Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, and others missing time. But regular season stats don't mean much when you can't close out games when they matter the most. So, Jake, what are your thoughts on the 23 Dallas Cowboys as their poor playoff performance streak continued?
Yeah, it's kind of a lot. I mean, what you just said, like 12-5 was definitely better than I thought they were going to be. I think they had a little bit of a better season than I anticipated, but I mean, it's just figuring out the postseason issues. That's the thing. Like I don't think Jerry cares about regular season wins. Like he wants Super Bowls. Like and hell, it's been forever since they've even been in the NFC Championship, let alone a Super Bowl. But I mean, you think of our childhood when we were kids, it felt like Dallas was in the NFC Championship every year with either like Green Bay or San Francisco. And now, I mean, we've seen both of them return, but we haven't seen Dallas ever return.
Yep. 28 straight years now that they have not gotten past the divisional round.
What a shame.
Yeah. For me anyway. Let's talk about the offseason moves. Jerry Jones, shortly after the season was over, was very boisterous, claiming that we were all in and then did not do shit. Starting with the coaching staff, a lot of Cowboys fans were calling for a change at the head coach, believing Mike McCarthy wasn't the answer, coupling that with some huge names in the head coaching ranks that were available for the likes of Sean Payton, Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, Jim Harbaugh. A lot of fans were hopeful that we would see a change at the starting helm. That did not happen. Mike McCarthy was rather quickly announced to be returning as the head coach. So that was a short-lived wish. Some coaching changes did occur, however, most notably the Dan Quinn left to take the head coaching role for the Commanders. He brought along with him Joe Witt Jr. and Sharif Floyd as they left for the division rivals. Aiden Durde also took the DC role with the Seattle Seahawks, so he is also gone. Coming in to replace Quinn is hard-nosed coach and former head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Mike Zimmer. Zimmer brought a slew of his own defensive coaching staff with him. One Cowboys favorite, Al Harris, was retained, and he was promoted from DB's coach to assistant head coach. So I do like that move. From a player's perspective, several departures. Tony Pollard has now moved on to the Titans. Michael Gallup was originally with the Raiders, and unfortunately, he just announced his retirement. Tyler Biadasz has left to go to the Commanders. Tyron Smith is gone. He's now on the Jets. A lot of movement on the defensive side of the ball as well. Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Neville Gallimore, Jonathan Hankins have all left for new teams. Leighton Vander Esch retired. Stephon Gilmore is still a question mark. He has not been re-signed. Neither has Jaron Kearse. In terms of new additions, there's not much here. 32-year-old linebacker Eric Kendricks was tapped to run Zimmer's defense. After a one-year hiatus, my boy Zeke is back in a Cowboys uniform, signing a one-year deal. Royce Freeman, former running back, backup for the Rams, signed a one-year deal, and that's about it. To make matters more difficult for the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and Dak Prescott all need to be paid. And if you guys have been paying any attention the past couple days, quarterbacks that are not doing much in terms of playoffs or don't have a whole lot of experience are getting paid big money. So Dallas is going to have to find a way to retain all three of these guys. It leaves Dallas in a very sticky situation. Potentially a Saquon Barkley situation where they're going to have to let one of these guys potentially hit free agency to see what the market's going to bring and then attempt to match. The problem with that is one being that there's undoubtedly a team that's going to overpay for services for one of these guys. The other being that Dallas is likely going to struggle to make cap room to make it work for all three of these dudes. So it's going to be a struggle. They definitely have some work to be done on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball to bring in those stars back. Looking at draft picks, round one pick was Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle for Oklahoma. He looks to step in for Tyron Smith. Marshawn Nealon, defensive end for Western Michigan, came in as round two. Cooper Beebe, played guard for Kansas State. He's probably going to be stepping into the center position, at least until Zach Martin retires. And then we also have Marist Leofu, linebacker from Notre Dame, who's going to be stepping in to fill one of those gaps from Leighton Vander Esch leaving. Jake, what are your thoughts on the 23 offseason for the Cowboys? And throwing it out here, if you had to choose to let Lamb, Parsons, or Prescott go, which one do you think you would let walk?
For cap purposes, I'd let Dak go, and just because I'm kind of like he still has never impressed me that much. Like he's never been that guy to me. Like I don't know. Even at Mississippi State, like he got a lot of credit there, and I was like, I've never just thought he was like that great. Like he's serviceable, yes, but with the amount of money that he's going to command, I think that cripples this team because if you look at this team, this team doesn't strike me as like a young, talented team. Like a lot of these guys are veterans. That's kind of the problem. You need that secure mix of young talent with your high paid guys. If you start paying three guys like that, there's going to be no money for anything else. They're never going to be able to bring in any free agents that are worth anything. So I don't know. Like I struggle to see what they do with this team. The Lions obviously just showed you can sign three guys to huge contracts, but those three guys are young. Like I don't know if I would sign Prescott with huge contracts to Lamb and Parsons. Like I don't know. It's an interesting situation that they're in, and Dak is the one that I would cut or get rid of and try to save. Bring in a rookie quarterback. Those rookie quarterback deals are safe for a few years, and you've got a ton of extra money you can spend on other pieces. I mean, we've seen a lot of teams do that recently. As you mentioned, like with Tua and Jordan Love getting huge deals, like, man, that's some serious money Dak's going to need. So, but overall for their offseason, I do think bringing in Kendrick at linebacker, he was a need. Like how good he's going to be is one thing, but I do think he was a need. So I think it was a good signing. Starting two rookies on the offensive line is going to be a little interesting also, especially when the running game I don't think is going to be very good. So there's I don't know. I just have a lot of questions with this team.
Yeah, definitely a running back by committee approach on the offensive side of the ball. Wide receiver room, I think we started to get Brandon Cooks. You saw flashes of him, which is frustrating because the dude's really talented. It's just like wherever he lands, like he's been passed around so much, and we didn't do a good job of getting the ball in his hands throughout the year. CD definitely needs some support. Jalen Tolbert's had some flashes in the offseason so far, but this seems to happen every offseason thus far where you hear Jalen Tolbert's name about, oh, he made big catch after big catch in the offseason during training camp and stuff, and then you don't really see much from him during the regular season. I'm a huge fan of Jake Ferguson. I love Jake Ferguson. I see him as our long-term replacement for the Dalton Schultz, Jason Witten gap. I'm not too terribly concerned about this offensive line so long as we can stay healthy. The biggest question mark that we've been dealing with for several years is now gone, which is can Tyron Smith last an entire season? We don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm a huge fan of Tyron Smith, but it was always frustrating because you could only count on him for a handful of games. He was never going to get through the entire season. So hopefully we've gotten over that hump. On the defensive side of the ball, DeMarcus Lawrence is definitely getting up there in age. I love Odigizua. Micah Parsons obviously is one of my favorite players. Some question marks on the linebacker front, but overall, I'm excited to see what Mike Zimmer is going to be able to do with his defense. It's definitely going to be a different approach than what we had with Dan Quinn. Should be a relatively smooth transition without Harris being there. I think the biggest thing is going to be Zimmer is likely to be on the field. And if you're familiar at all with Mike Zimmer, he is a fiery dude. So Micah Parsons, I talked about this a bit last year. I think Micah Parsons needs a coach that's a little bit more hard-nosed to get him to be playing 100% all times. I don't know what happened with him during the game against Green Bay, but he kind of disappeared. He deals with a lot of double teams and stuff like that, but I think this is a good thing for Parsons' career to be working with Zimmer. Moving on to the schedule here, some tough road games. They're starting the year off at Cleveland, which is never an easy place to play. They have a road game in Pittsburgh, October 6th, which will be a tough one. They're at home again playing against Detroit. I don't know why we don't go to Detroit. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It just seems like we always play you guys in Dallas. Week 7 bye, and then a rough stretch. We go to San Francisco, then we go to Atlanta to play the Falcons, then back home to play Philly, and then the Texans come to town on Monday Night Football, November 18th. Looking at a couple of these final games here. At Washington, November 24th. They've got a game at home against Tampa Bay on the 22nd of December. The road game to Philly is their second to last game of the year, which is Sunday, December 29th. So looking at the schedule here, division odds is plus 155. Their over-under is 10.5. Where do you have these guys sitting at the end of the year?
So there's an interesting stretch here, as you just mentioned, but I'm going to go 2 weeks back. I know their bye's in the middle, but at Pitt, Detroit, bye, at San Francisco, at Atlanta, Philly, Houston, at Washington, which is still a divisional game, home against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. Like, that's a stretch. I mean, I know they get the bye in the middle of that, but that's going to be tough. This might come as a surprise. I have them at 11-6. I have them going over 10.5 at plus 164, which, if you remember, I did have the Eagles at 11-6 also. And based off of the tiebreak, I have Dallas winning on the tiebreak.
Yeah, I've got them. I'm a little bit more a little bit more confident in this team, which bites me in the ass every year. I've got them going 12-5. So I haven't just winning one more game, but that again is going to be a really tough stretch. This team has to stay healthy. I would really love to see an entire season with both Deron Bland and Trevon Diggs out on the field. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Overall, we'll see what happens here. I've got them landing at the exact same record as last year, which is 12-5. Now, what happens in the playoffs, we'll talk about that when it comes to it. I don't want to stress over that right now because I have nightmares as it is. All right, let's talk about some betting line stuff here. So like we've done every week, I just picked 5 bets that I thought were, potentially interesting here, starting with the Commanders. We've got a bet for Jaden Daniels for most rookie passing yards, offensive rookie of the year with Jaden Daniels here, NFL coach of the year, Dan Quinn, Austin Eckler, 10 plus rushing touchdowns for the year. And then another one, Commanders beat Cowboys twice in the regular season at plus 1,000. What bet would you be throwing money down here for the Commanders?
Well, so I really like the Eckler 10 plus regular season rushing touchdowns, but I'm a little concerned that he's in a different environment now because Cliff Kingsbury has never really been, he's been more of like a air raid, run and shoot type guy as opposed to a run the ball type guy. But I think that's the one I would still go with just because Eckler is a touchdown machine, but we'll leave it to see if a new location changes that.
All right, let's look at the Giants here. We've got most regular season rookie receiving yards for Malik Neighbors at plus 480. Offensive rookie of the year, Malik Neighbors. Defensive player of the year, Brian Burns. NFL comeback player of the year, Daniel Jones. And week 1 starting quarterback, which is a little interesting because we talked about this a little bit, and Drew Lock at plus 430. What are you throwing money on here?
Give me Drew Lock.
Drew Lock.
Plus 430.
I thought so. I'm glad that I added that here. Yeah, let's move on to the Eagles here, just to kind of wrap things up quickly. We've got most regular season rushing yards for Saquon Barkley, most regular season receiving yards for AJ Brown, regular season rushing touchdowns, Jalen Hurts, plus 950, 1250 regular season passing yards plus for AJ Brown, and finally NFC Championship winner at plus 600.
Yeah, I know this isn't going to be a popular pick because it's minus 105, but I do like the 1250 plus for AJ Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a popular pick sitting at the minus 105. So, okay, all right. Looking at the Cowboys here, most regular season passing yards, Dak Prescott plus 1,000. Most regular season passing touchdowns, bet Dak Prescott plus 950. 4,500 plus passing yards for Dak. Most regular season receiving yards for CeeDee Lamb at plus 750. And finally, NFC Championship winner plus 800.
Jeez, I don't like any of these. Let's go Dak over 4,500 at plus 350.
All right. Well, there you go. That is it for us as far as this week when it comes up to NFC East. Our next show will be covering the AFC South, right? I think it's the next one. So that should be released roughly at the same time here. We're going to hit you guys with a couple different NFL episodes. We've also got the NCAA show that's going on right now. So make sure you guys pay attention to that. We just covered Big 12 and Group of 5. So that'll be coming out here soon. And we are rapidly approaching the NFL season. I think we talked about this at the top of the call, but we've got the Hall of Fame game here coming up on Thursday. So no more weeks of no NFL football. I love it. It's finally here. So it's preseason football, but I'd take that over nothing.
Better than anything.
Right? Yeah.
Give me that over the nonsense Olympics. Give a shit about that.
Oh man, always the dynamite drop in, Monty. You got anything else here?
Larry Smith from Bucksnort, Tennessee, in his fencing costume. I don't give a shit. Give me
Bucksnort, Tennessee. I love it. Is that an actual place?
I think so. Yeah, we'll visit there. We'll do a live show from their remote sometime.
Live show from Bucksnort. Okay, I dig it. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in here. As always, with me is the fine citizen Jacob Workman. This is Reese Downing, TNT Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NFL Edition, NFC East preview. We will see you guys soon.